this is what our media are doing. And not just one person in the media, because that's not the way the American media functions. We don't have, for the most part, independent newsrooms with a diverse viewpoint or a standard, that is the pursuit of objective truth. Now this is going to be a little painful for some of you, but we need to do this. We need to do this. We need to put this out there, and then we need to address it. Dr. Bandy Lee is back, who violated her ethics responsibilities as a psychiatrist because the profession has denounced, since Barry Goldwater, the Goldwater Rule, this kind of politicization of psychiatry and psychology. And you have Brian Stelter, Helter Skelter, who's one of the biggest lowlives in the media today, and there are many of them. There are many of them. But I blame, you see, the executives in charge of these newsrooms, and I blame the companies that own these newsrooms for tolerating this. If I had ever gone on television, Fox, or any other network for that matter, and I said that Barack Obama was mentally ill, power-hungry, a narcissist, an egomaniac, and hence mentally ill, unhinged, we need to look at the 25th Amendment, I would have been banned. I would have been banned. But this is the daily claptrap that we hear. Now, there's a guy by the name of Bret Stephens. He writes the New York Times. He was pushed out of the Wall Street Journal. He's an absolute reprobate. Slimeball, behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. He's one of their bought and paid for so-called conservatives over there at the New York Slimes. And he's a never-Trumper, which is exactly why he works for the New York Slimes. And by the way, hour 2, you're going to love hour 1, but you're going to love hour 2. Stay with me, folks. So here is what Bret Stephens had to say. Now he's on Meet the Depressed with Chuck Todd. Chuck Todd chose Bret Stephens because he knew what Bret Stephens would say. Bret Stephens is poisonous. Whether it's on social media, whether it's in his columns for the most part, whether it's as a guest. So Chuck Todd knows exactly what Bret Stephens is going to say about the President of the United States on NBC News Station, on Meet the Depressed, while the President of the United States is overseas. Cut 5, go.
The real issue for Republicans is simply to...
And I always love it when they tell us what the real issue is for Republicans. All Republicans must agree with Bret Stephens. All Republicans. Why don't you rise up and get rid of your president? Where's all the Republicans? Go ahead.
The fact that the president does not stand in any way for the traditional conservative economic principles that have defined the party for the better part of the last...
Let's just hold off right there. Did John McCain, when he ran for president, he was a big spending liberal Republican. Mitt Romney, either the Bushes. The only two in the last century, I would argue, would have been Reagan and Coolidge. From an economic perspective, Donald Trump has actually been fairly much a traditionalist, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, spending a lot of money. Unfortunately, this is what Republicans do now. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. And of course, we criticize all that here, but so be it. And tariffs. And this issue is apparently too complicated for Bret Stephens. If he were to say, I understand the tariffs with China, I understand what he's trying to do with China, I understand the battle with China, makes a lot of sense from a conservative as well as an overall American perspective, but I'm not sure about the tariffs with our ally. That's fine, but he doesn't say that. It even gets worse. Go ahead.
They don't even stand, never mind the economic principles, broader principles of character. I mean, what we saw over the last few days is
broader principles of character? Has the president done something while he's in office that shows a lack of character? Just left all the interns alone. You want to see one of the most sleaziest human beings to ever be in the Oval Office? You read about Lyndon Johnson. You want to see, and I hate to say it, but I must, one of the sleaziest people to ever be in the Oval Office, you read about John Kennedy. And we know all about Bill Clinton. We all know about Ted Kennedy. And we can go on about members of Congress and members of the media and the Me Too movement and how they blew out morning shows and hosts. Charlie Rose is gone, and Matt Lauer is gone, Mark Halpern's gone, but coming back. We can go all down the... Did Donald Trump do something, since he's been elected president anyway, that has shown a lack of character? I can't think of a single thing. Go ahead.
Who is either mentally unwell or morally unfit. Maybe both. I don't know.
So here we have a guy who declares the president is mentally unwell or morally unfit. And he's giving a national news platform on a show that Tim Russert and Joel Spivak used to be the anchors of. And now you have this truly loathsome child and liberal Democrat activist, Chuck Todd. And you bring on this Bret Stephens, he contributes nothing to the national dialogue. Nothing of substance. He never has substance. In fact, he's a columnist without substance. He's an attack dog. And so they bring him on to be an attack dog. Go ahead.
But it's important to simply call these things as we see them. You have behavior that is unprecedented in any kind of presidential history in the United States or frankly elsewhere.
Are you out of your mind, such as it is? Behavior unprecedented in any kind of presidential history? Well, I don't know what that means, any kind of presidential. This guy's supposed to be coherent. He's supposed to be a writer. Any kind of presidential history? You mean in presidential history? In the United States or elsewhere? Elsewhere? In any part of the rest of the world? Now this is a guy who writes for the New York Times and does the Sunday shows. He's an absolute lowlife and a buffoon. And then we move to Brian Stelter on CNN. Brian Stelter is a full-time employee at CNN, which is owned by AT&T. Many of you are customers of AT&T. Can you think of a single profundity that has ever come out of this man's mouth? Anything particularly informative or educational or newsworthy? He too used to work at the New York Slimes, by the way, before he was in his mother's basement while he was going to Towson College in Maryland, as I recall. But I want you to listen to this guy. Cut 6, go.
The story that's playing out every day on our TV screens and Twitter feeds. He's getting worse. We can all see it. It's happening.
So we all see it. Now he knows we all don't see it. Not because we're stupid, because we're smart. He knows there's tens of millions of us who don't see it. We don't work in his newsroom. We don't live in a cloistered, radical left-wing environment. We're not progressives. We don't hate the president. We voted for the president. We want him to succeed. We think he's fighting a hell of a fight. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, we all see it. Now, what do we all see? Go ahead.
But it's still a very hard, very sensitive story to cover. I'm talking, of course, about President Trump, about his behavior, about his instability, the contradictions, the lies, the complete rejection of reality.
Really? This is why, ladies and gentlemen, the New York Times versus Sullivan rule from the Supreme Court must go. It has to go. It is destroying the media in this country. It's allowing demagogues, political demagogues, who couldn't get elected dog catcher, to weasel into positions in the media, which is largely left-wing and largely controlled by the left. We know that from studies and surveys and polls. To drag our country down. This has no relationship to journalism whatsoever. We're being preached to by the most radical elements in our culture. We're being denounced. We're being smeared. The president is being burdened and undermined every step of the way. As I said, this is an unfree press. This is a propaganda machine. That's what it is. A one-way propaganda machine. Go ahead.
Some prominent figures, including the husband of Trump aide Kellyanne Conway, are pleading with the press.
Who cares about the husband of Kellyanne Conway? What does that have to do with anything? That's like the wife of Attorney General Mitchell. Remember her during the New York Times period? The media loved to go to her. Loved to go to her. She was, I think, bipolar or something like that. And they would get quotes from her to embarrass her husband, the Attorney General, to embarrass the Nixon administration. That's why they go to George Conway. They don't go to George Conway because he's smart. They certainly don't go to him because he's charismatic. He's a big, fat, stupid slob. And they go to this guy. Whatever he tweets out, they grab. It's like this guy, Scaramucci. I never had him on the show. He was always a sleazeball. He's a weird dude. All 4 feet 2 inches of the guy. Look how quickly he turned on the president. His ego is so massive. On a dime, just like Scarborough. Look how quickly he and his lovely Mika, look how they turned on the president. But they're all mentally healthy. They've all seen the light. Because they're on the attack against the president of the United States. Go ahead.
To take this more seriously. On Friday, George Conway said Trump is decomposing before our very eyes.
Now you say, why quote George Conway? Nobody cares about George Conway. You don't know anything about George Conway. For all I know, he's a mental case. What kind of guy trashes his wife's boss while she's a senior counsel to the boss? What kind of a guy puts his wife in that kind of position? Notice Helter Skelter has no interest in asking that question. How bizarre this man is, this George Conway. So they quote him. Next thing you know, they'll quote some porn actress. Oh, they did. Next thing you know, they'll quote the porn actress's lawyer, who's got felony charges up the wazoo. Oh, they do. They do. They'll quote anybody. They'll interview anybody. They'll make infamous anybody. These are the same sickening frauds who tried to destroy Brett Kavanaugh. And I'm not a Brett Kavanaugh fan. But what's fair is fair. Who tried to destroy this man with horror stories, lies about gang rape, with not a scintilla of evidence. None. These unbelievable lies and stories plastered on television and radio day after day on the Senate floor in the Senate committee. The media pushing them. The media serving as sieves for the leakers. I'm not done. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Message and data